concept of the home rule, and this is where you have to tackle two ideas, basically gives you the Hindu-Muslim unity phase. Now, discuss in your words the rationale of the Muslims riding on this catchphrase of Hindu-Muslim unity, what the moderates actually thought they would achieve by it. And I think we have to bring in Gandhi specifically in this point right now.
Tilak, Annie Besant and Gandhi.
Yes, you can discuss these three. So, and also the transition of Annie Besant from one to the other. So that's also very interesting. I don't know they worked under what pressures, because, literally the motivation of the Muslims to actually collude with the slogan up to the time it suited them.
Right.
And the, I don't know, it's naivete or what of the moderates to do it, and Gandhi in it. So this bit.
No, they were actually playing the 1920s version of Chanakya Niti, so I'll explain what they were doing. So there are different sets of interests working. By 1914, moving to 1916, the Muslim community here is in a fix, serious fix. It doesn't know what to do, who to support, because you are midway into the First World War. Turkey joins this later, and there are several frantic messages sent from here to Turkey: do not jump into the World War because we will be forced to take a position. And we don't want to take a position which is anti-British. It endangers our interests here and our position in the global ummah. So please don't do it. Now, Turkey has to jump into this because it loses a significant portion of its territory in the preceding Balkan Wars. And therefore, it sees this as an opportunity to get it back. And around that period is when they also undertake the genocide of the Armenian population, which is significant. All of this happens. So, European powers may have an agnostic, irreligious motivation with respect to Germany. But their motivation with respect to Turkey is the re-establishment of Western civilization and Christian civilization in those parts of Europe which were previously Christian. So, it's not as if they had a monolithic approach to every participant in the World War. Depending on who the participant is, the motivations were very different, either territorial or religious or civilizational. Now, by the time it comes to 1916 and Turkey jumps into the war, Indian Muslims are wondering what to do. The British commit a few strategic errors at that point. Even during the World War, after the participation of Turkey, Indian Muslims have a wait and watch approach. They're waiting to see which way this war swings. Let's wait and watch. There is a Kanpur mosque incident that happens in 1916, where a portion of the mosque is demolished under the orders of the local collector and so on and so forth, and the temple is saved because of the Congress's proximity to the British. This movement, or this particular incident, is when the Ali brothers step into the picture. Both the brothers come to prominence because of this particular movement, and they realize, you know what, the Muslim League is dominated by those people who want to collaborate with the British, but we now need a movement because we are under attack everywhere, both within Bharat and outside. That's when the movement actually starts. And then they realize the Congress needs our support in some way to present a united face to get dominion status. The Congress realizes that as long as it does not have Muslim support, it cannot present a case for a single nation, because there can't be two nations for the grant of a nation statehood. That is why the two-nation theory is so critical, because the definition of a nation state is based on homogeneity in terms of either race or religion or language. So they say we need these people. So Tilak, Gandhi, before Gandhi, Tilak has already started this movement. Annie Besant has already started this movement because they have started the Home Rule Leagues. The Bombay branch of the Home Rule League is run by Jinnah, and he was a fantastic administrator of the movement. He did a fabulous job of it. I think the man acquitted himself in every role, better than Gandhi. So while this movement happens, they then realize the best way to get the British to take a few steps back from Turkey is to participate with the Congress and present Bharat now as the bargaining chip. And then comes the Lucknow Pact of 1916, which starts this golden phase of Hindu-Muslim unity in this country, which lasts for barely 3-4 years. And this movement dies a natural death by the time the purpose of the Khilafat movement itself is rendered infructuous by Kemal Ataturk, who effectively wins the war for the Turks and also demolishes the Islamic Caliphate, abolishes the concept of an Islamic Caliphate, and the so-called Khalifa has to flee Turkey in a British vessel. That is the final insult to the global ummah, which is delivered by the British with the icing on the cake. Now, by the time you're looking at the closure of the First World War, Turkey is lost in the first round when Kemal Ataturk has not come to power. And then you have the negotiations going on with respect to territories. So now the argument becomes of the Indian Muslims, restore every territory that Turkey has lost in the war. So Germany's territories will be taken away in Alsace-Lorraine and other places. But as far as Turkey is concerned, it should not suffer the same consequences as Germany. The British man and all these allied powers say, how do you expect us to treat Turkey differently when it has been an equal participant in this war? Why should Germany and Turkey be treated differently? Then they say, okay, if that is not possible, at the very least, preserve Turkey's control over what is known as the Islamic homeland, which means Palestine, Syria, Mecca, and Saudi Arabia, which is called that's where the whole thing comes from. Al Jazeera is actually named after this. The Jazeera, because that's where you have their holy shrines. This becomes the bargaining chip. All of this is rendered infructuous when Kemal Ataturk comes to power, and then he wins back his territories from Greece and other countries, which is Turkey's territories. And then he says, you know what? The presence of this caliphate in this country is single-handedly responsible for us being constantly at loggerheads with the West and everybody else. I'll take away the British suspicion that it might lead to Islamic revivalism by demolishing the concept of a caliphate altogether. So the first step that he does, he says, the Khalifa will no more be an individual. It will be the parliament itself, which has never happened in Islamic history. That creates a huge round of debates as to how can Khalifa be an entity as opposed to an individual. And then he says, I'll go to the next step and destroy that institution altogether, and he abolishes it. Once this is done, every reason that existed until then for Hindu-Muslim unity is gone. All promises made until then are retracted. But the Hindu side continues to live by its promise. And then starts the phase of riots, bloody riots. During the period of Khilafat, it continues in Bihar and other places in districts like Ara district, massive riots that go on. They get reported because the Hindu side responds in massive numbers, which results in greater concessions being given to the Muslim League by the Hindu side. So regardless of who causes that particular riot, merely because there's a retaliation from the other side in self-defense, Congress is expected to give more concessions in seat participation, regardless of the numbers. So in certain provinces, even if the Muslim population was less than 20%, their representation in the province's assembly would be over 50%. These are the kind of concessions that were extracted. And then once the riots start, by 1924, Kohad, Malegaon, Moplah, Malabar, all these places, it's over, done and dusted. So at best, 1916 to 1924. There is no concept of a unity before or after.
And Gandhi?
Gandhi was taking forward Tilak's and Annie Besant's role in the support of this Khilafat movement. But the one thing that he does is Tilak and Annie Besant had significant political standing independent of their support from Muslims. Gandhi's rise to political power is significantly on the backs of Muslims. And therefore, he is effectively held hostage to their support to continue being relevant. And there comes a point where Khilafatist hooligans take over Congress proceedings and shut out every dissenting voice to prop up Congress, to prop up Gandhi. And it is captured in the minutes of the Congress proceedings. Now, I'm not even fabricating this. I don't need to do a Romila Thapar here. So I know for a fact, which is why the proceedings are abundantly clear. So the man, for all his professions of non-violence, was comfortable being, let's say, being led by hooligans of the first order. His response to Moplah Riots is nothing. His response to Kohat is, Hindus, please don't go back. Until Muslims of that particular region grow a heart and a spine and a conscience, please don't go back.
Kohat is significant because Kohat had a Hindu minority.
7%.
So while he talks about the rampant riots that took place all over India, nowhere was there displacement of Muslim population. But Kohat, where the minority was Hindu, there was actually a displacement of population. It's very, very reminiscent of Kashmir.
So the British troops who were stationed in Rawalpindi cantonment had to be called to evacuate the 7% population where 93% was Muslims. And Kohat is currently in NWFP. This is the nature of the so-called Hindu-Muslim unity. By the time Khilafat is done, everybody says, so Annie Besant, who was until then the extremist, moves to the moderate side. Because if extremism is Gandhi, with the support of Khilafatists, I don't want to be on this side. Because she said this is going to lead to anarchy. Not just that. There were religiously motivated defections in the army in favor of the Khilafatists. in the Muslim regiments. So the Hindu population and leaders who were concerned for Hindu population safety were worried. If these kind of defections happen, and the British army is left defenseless, or it doesn't have the numbers needed, what happens to the Hindu population? Then these were the kind of concerns. Then they realized that this nonsense is not going to work. Let's go back to the Tilak model, where Tilak effectively said, don't fight for a place in the bureaucracy. Fight for a place in the Imperial Legislative Assembly and be a part of the change from within the system. So he changes the moderates' approach to colonial administration by saying that I might as well learn from Syed Ahmad Khan that if I can't fight them militarily, I might as well occupy those positions and change it. That leads to the establishment of the organization that Mr. Sanyal mentioned previously, the Swaraj Party. Motilal Nehru and all these people established the Swaraj Party and say that because of the non-cooperation movement, the Congress stays out of all the elections. Muslim League is constantly contesting in elections. And therefore, for them to become part of the legislative debates and for them to become part of the policy-making discussions, they decide to contest elections. The Justice Party comes around the very same period. Then you have the Singh Sabha set up across the country, which is, as Mr. Sanyal said, the precursor to the Khalistan movement, which is where the division starts between the Hindu identity and the Sikh identity.
The thing is that this is an extract from a book on modern India by Arjun Dev. I did a Twitter crowdsource information on this. It ruled the roost of India's education system for about 20 years at least. And this is what they say about the Moplah Riots. The movement was a great success. I think this is for the non-cooperation. And the firings and arrests could not stop it. Before the year 1921 was out, 30,000 people were in jail. They included most of the prominent leaders. Gandhi, however, was still free. A rebellion had broken out in some parts of Kerala. The rebels were mostly Moplah peasants. Hence, it is called the Moplah Rebellion. The rebellion was suppressed by terrible brutalities. More than 2,000 Moplah were killed and about 45,000 arrested. An example of the brutalities was suffocation to death of 67 Moplah prisoners in a railway wagon when they were being shifted from one place to another, full stop.
Right.
So now please show the...
Okay. Yeah. Let's do a compare and contrast in how history is represented in this country.
And the reason why I say this is that institutionalized history books are teaching us this. This is the Government of India commissioned history books from the NCERT that is doing this to us.
So here's a
where are we to go? Yeah.
69 people get burnt alive in Sabarmati Express. Subsequently, around 2,000 people are killed in Gujarat. The official numbers are close to 900 are Muslims and close to 400 are Hindus. Nobody talks of the 69 people who were burnt alive in the Sabarmati Express. Now when it comes to the Moplah riots, we are only taught of the 67 people who were burnt in a railway wagon. How many people participated in the Moplah genocides? I've given the numbers after calculating it from at least 3 reports. Close to 49,000. 49,000 people were out with the Moplah knife. 49,000 people were the number of participants. And take it from me, this is the number of the average size of an army during those periods. If you're looking at the medieval period, or let's say the 12th or the 14th century, you're looking at 10,000 soldiers, 30,000 soldiers, and 40,000 soldiers. Close to 50,000 people were out on the streets. Caliphates were established in Kerala, in Malabar. Freedom was announced, and you had generals being established, kings being established, Islamic Caliphate kings being established, or caliphs being established. And how they went about killing these people, and the plunder goes on, I think, from August 1920 till February 1921 for a period of 6 months. 6 months. They had to bring reinforcements from Bangalore, from Madras, and so many places. They didn't know what was happening. Literally, law had taken a vacation. The British had absolutely no control over that particular period. They had to do search and combing operations for 6 months to kill them because it's a mountainous region full of wild terrain, which cantonments, let's say companies, coming from outside don't have any knowledge of. Exactly the problem that Indian Army faced with Ulfa in Assam or in Kashmir. So for 6 months this goes on. Gandhi continues. He continues. Relentless. Annie Besant writes stinging, scathing letters. Any other man should have committed suicide upon receiving that letter, if he had some sense of shame and conscience. She details how people were paraded naked. Falsified affidavits were filed before the Supreme Court by a so-called activist on ripped fetuses about Gujarat. But that was the exact thing that happened in Malabar. This was a reality reported by multiple people, including Muslim members of the Congress who were writing to Gandhi, please take a note of this. I would only suggest a shortcut to reading my book. Don't read anything in between. There are only 2 chapters which according to me are strictly relevant. Chapter 1 and Chapter 9. Chapter 1 is how the two-nation theory began and what are its origins and how old are they. Chapter 9, the implementation of the two-nation theory on the ground. That's it, you're done. You don't need to read anything else.
Quick questions, anybody? Hands going up.
Yes, Anand, please, 30 seconds, please.
Where's Anand?
If he consumes 30 seconds in the question, it's not my problem.
That was an amazing session, Sai. I'll take less than 30 seconds.
Please.
2 very short questions. One, why do you think that this government is celebrating the Khilafat movement, 100 years of Khilafat? And number 2, is there such a thing as a moderate movement?
So I think the government is currently following the Chadar Bhejo policy. Ajmer ko Chadar Bhejo. Celebrate the Inquisitor of Goa. Co-opt Periyar somehow. I don't know what are these compulsions, especially when the government continues to enjoy the support of its core constituency. And as you said on a television debate last week, it is blessed with a joke of an opposition. So there are really no hardcore political compulsions here where there is a shrinking vote base or whatnot. So what is this audience that is being catered to? I don't understand genuinely. And coming to the second part of your question, all of us have learnt our lessons from the Nupur Sharma episode, so don't put me in a spot. Okay. All I will say is this. Computer and education will not change the mindset. I hope the government realizes that. Address the mindset head on, don't beat around the bush. Ho gaya, ho gaya. If the homeland, let's say, if the country of birth or the land of birth of Islam is addressing this issue head on, why can't Bharat, having suffered the consequences for at least 1200 years? I think there is a serious paucity of imagination, originality, and vertebracy on this particular front. That's all I have to say. Despite the achievements of the government on every other front, and despite me being a votary because there are really no other options, I would still say on this front, it's been a letdown. That is my humble opinion. I could be wrong, I could be trolled for this, but I will stand by this opinion.